When people talk about the golden era of GM muscle, it's always the same names. Chevelle SS, Camaros Z28, Corvette Stingray. But hiding in plain sight was another beast, quieter, classier, and just as deadly. A muscle car in a tailored suit, the Monte Carlo SS454. The grown man's street weapon? That history forgot. Believe it or not, the Monte Carlo story starts not with a Chevy, but with a Ford, the 1958 Thunderbird. That year, Ford ditched the sporty two-seater setup and turned the T-Bird into a plush four-seat personal luxury coupe. And it sold like crazy. GM saw the money pouring in and thought, wait, we need one of those too. By the mid-60s, the personal luxury market was booming. Pontiac had the Grand Prix, Buick rolled out the Riviera, Oldsmobile had the Toronado. All of them were fast, fancy, and dripping with swagger. But Chevy, the everyman's brand, was left out of the party. That changed when GM executive Pete Estes launched a project called Concours. It was Chevy's answer to Pontiac's Grand Prix. Long hood, short deck, chrome in all the right places. But by the time the car got the green light, Estes had moved on. And in stepped none other than John DeLorean. Yes, that DeLorean. He didn't just build time machines, he gave the Monte Carlo its final push onto the road. When the Monte Carlo finally hit the streets for the 1970 model year, it didn't just show up, it made an entrance. Built on a stretch version of the A-body platform shared with the Chevelle, the Monte got an extra 4 inches of wheelbase. The result? A 6-foot-long hood, a stately silhouette, and enough chrome to make a Buick nervous. Chevy nailed the proportions. It looked fast, expensive, and grown up. Up front, concealed windshield wipers, a bold grille, and stacked headlights framed by aggressive fender lines. Out back, a sloping rear deck and taillights tucked into the bumper like fine cufflinks. Inside, it was all wood grain trim, bucket seats, and optional air conditioning. This wasn't a boy racer's cockpit. This was where a mid-level executive sat back, loosened his tie, and smiled at the sound of a V8 burbling through dual pipes. Now here's where things get fun. Every single Monte Carlo, even the cheapest base model, came with a V8. That's right, no sad little inline sixes here. Chevy knew their new luxury coupe needed muscle, even in its mildest form. The base engine was a 350 cubic inch small block V8, pushing out 250 horsepower. Respectable. It came with a 3-speed manual on the column. Simple, honest, and just enough grunt to get you in trouble. But if you had a little more coin and a little less self-control, the options opened up fast. A hotter 350 with 300 horses, a 400 small block, or the big boy 402 putting out 330 horsepower. Transmission choices? Plenty. You could row your own gears with a 4-speed M20, go classic with the old-school 2-speed Power Glide, or cruise like a king with the buttery smooth Turbo Hydromatic. Chevy wasn't playing around. They made sure even the luxury Monte Carlo had some serious bark under the hood. Now, if you were the kind of person who liked your morning coffee strong, your suits pressed, and your horsepower loud, Chevy had just the thing for you. It was called RPO Z20, but real ones know it by a much simpler name, Monte Carlo SS454. This wasn't just a trim package, it was a full-blown transformation. Under that massive hood lived the LS5454 cubic inch big block, a monster of an engine, officially rated at 360 horsepower and a tire-melting 500 pound-feet of torque. But let's be honest, Chevy was sandbagging. In the real world, this thing was making closer to 400 horses on a bad day. Mated to that brute was the legendary Turbo Hydromatic 400, a 3-speed automatic that could take a beating and still shift like butter. No manual was officially available despite the myths. But honestly, with torque like that, who needed a clutch? Performance? Oh, it delivered. 0 to 60 in 7 seconds flat, quarter mile in 14.9 seconds at 92 miles per hour. And remember, this car weighed nearly 2 tons and had simulated wood on the dash. That's what made it so cool. It didn't look like a street racer, but it sure moved like one. To make sure all that muscle didn't twist the frame into a pretzel, Chevy beefed up the drivetrain. A 12-bolt rear axle with a 3.31 gear ratio came standard, and if you were smart, you checked the box for posy traction. Though weirdly, you could also order a highway-friendly 2.56 rear, which was great for fuel economy, terrible for stoplight drag races. Suspension-wise, this wasn't just a luxury float. SS models got the full F41 performance suspension package. Heavy-duty springs and shocks, boxed rear control arms, front and rear anti-roll bars, and frame stiffeners for good measure. Oh, and Chevy threw in the G67 automatic level control, a vacuum-operated air shock system that kept the rear nice and level no matter how many golf bags, suitcases, or metaphorical bodies you stuffed in the trunk. So what did it all mean? It meant you could blast down the freeway like a Chevelle SS, but arrive looking like you just stepped out of a boardroom. Comfort, composure, and raw power, all rolled into one velvet-wrapped sledgehammer. If you were looking for stripes, hood scoops, or giant rear wings, you wouldn't find them here. The Monte Carlo SS454 didn't need to shout. It had nothing to prove. From the outside, it looked almost identical to the standard Monte, unless you knew what to look for. Just a small SS454 badge tucked into the front fender's rocker trim, and a slightly more aggressive stance thanks to the F41 suspension and beefier tires. That's it. No decals, no nonsense. In 1971, Chevy added a tiny SS emblem on the rear panel, just in case you missed it while trying to keep up. This wasn't the kind of car that pulled up to the curb and demanded attention. It was the kind that parked quietly and left a cloud of burnt rubber on the way out. It didn't brag. It whispered, "I'm the real deal." By 1971, the writing was on the wall, and it was written in unleaded fuel and emissions regulations. To comply with new federal standards, Chevy had to drop the LS5's compression ratio from 10.25 to 1 down to 8.5 to 1. On paper, the engine still made 360 horsepower, but real-world performance took a noticeable hit. There were also a few visual tweaks: a new grille with fewer vertical bars, squarer headlight bezels, and rectangular parking lamps. The changes were subtle. Blink and you'd miss them. But the magic was starting to fade. Sales told the story. In 1970, Chevy sold 3,823 Monte Carlo SS 455s. In 1971, just 1,919. That's out of nearly 145,000 total Monte Carlos sold that year. Clearly, the SS454 was a rare breed, a specialty car for a very specific kind of buyer. And after 71, it was gone. Quietly dropped, no farewell tour, just a 1-2 punch of understated muscle, and then the curtain fell. The SS454 package wasn't cheap, but it wasn't outrageous either. For just $420 over the base Monte Carlo, you got a full-blown big block bruiser. That put the total price somewhere around $3,500 to $4,500 depending on options. Not bad for a car that could cruise in comfort and light up its rear tires on command. Compared to rivals like the Ford Thunderbird or Pontiac Grand Prix, the Monte Carlo SS offered serious value. It wasn't as flashy, but it was quicker, smoother, and often better equipped. The press noticed. Motor Trend praised the SS454 for its refined muscle, the perfect blend of power and polish. But the buying public? They weren't quite convinced. Most went for the luxury, not the speed. And by 1972, the SS454 quietly disappeared. The performance era was winding down. Emissions, insurance, and the dreaded gas crisis were knocking at the door. The malaise era had begun. The Monte Carlo SS454 was muscle for grown-ups. A car for those who'd outgrown the wild Chevelle, but still craved serious power. It's forgotten, underrated, but undeniably cool. Would you have picked the Monte Carlo SS or stuck with the Chevelle SS? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe if you love cars that whisper power but roar on the street.